Get started. I'll see if I can get you guys out of here just a little bit early.
Oh, that was the wrong one.
Wrong one.
I need you to. And I just flipped your slide to the end.
That's fine.
There you go. Sorry.
I'll see if I can. We've been kind of hanging out during the lunchtime and stuff. Okay. They're going to make just a couple of brief announcements. I think they're going to hand out a few more prizes, and then they're going to kind of coordinate a little bit if there's groups of you all that are interested in going and doing some of the different activities like the hikes and driving up to Pikes Peak or going down to Garden of the Gods or some of those things. They're going to try to get you at least where there's a group of you kind of know where y'all can commonly meet. There may be a couple of presenters that are going to go there too, so they're not going to be like your group leaders, but they'll kind of be there to help things with that. So just be aware of that. Again, my name is Brett Wilie. I'm from Waxahachie, Texas. Today's presentation I'm going to do is titled "Flipping is Not About Video and Technology." Really, it's kind of discussing the misconceptions about what the flipped classroom is what I want to focus on. Technology does not replace good teaching. I think that's one of the big fallacies. One of the big things that we have right now that's going on in the blog sessions and the Twitter sessions and a lot of the things in this communications about the flipped classroom, the Khan Academies, is we have there's a lot of folks out there that are really putting down the idea of flipping the classroom. And there's some good things that they're saying about that, and then there's some bad. And a lot of the bad is coming just from the misconceptions about what we have about what a flipped classroom is. So what I want to talk about today is really how and how not to use technology to flip a class. Now, we've been going to a 2-day conference now and been immersed in all these cool technologies, right? And so the first thing I want to tell you is that I am not against technology at all. In fact, I am a little kid at Christmas time when it comes to technology stuff. I threw a slide up here. This is the stuff that I knew off the top of my head that I personally have and own myself. Yes, I'm still in the dark ages. That's not an iPhone or an Android up in the top left-hand corner. It's a rotten Blackberry. My touch screen on my Blackberry is this right here. I can touch the screen. It does nothing, okay? No point, no drag, no anything. I have the little ball I have to roll. If I try to display web pages, you know what they look like? How many of y'all remember DOS? That's what it looks like. I don't get Windows pictures or anything, so that's this. I'm holding out, I guess, for like an iPhone 5 or something. I don't know. I bought the 4s for my wife and daughter, and then so that's one of the things I do to get sympathy around the house. However, you'll immediately notice down to the kind of bottom right, a little bit from that phone, I do have that though, and they don't, which is an iPad. So that's kind of my latest little toy that I've been playing right now. It is a toy to me because I haven't really been able to get into all of the things that that thing can do. I can play games on it really cool. There's some really fun apps. Taking that and applying it to what it is I need to do, I haven't gotten there yet, but it's cool, it's there. And you can see the other things I have listed up there. So I want to make sure and let you know I'm not against technology. The thing that I really want to bring out with this is that technology needs to be used as a tool for what it is that we're trying to do. We shouldn't ever, and we came up with this statement. The presenters were here for Monday and Tuesday before the conference started. And one of the natural progressions that just rolled into our discussions as we were talking about what we wanted to present and some things, we actually got to sit in on a webinar that John and Aaron participated in that was a group of people that we had people that were pro-flippers and anti-flippers or whatever it is you wanted to call them. It was very interesting, and one of the things that we came up with a statement that we want to get out is that we should never use a tool just for the sake of using the tool. In other words, we need to be able to take the tool because it's the right tool to use for what it is we're trying to accomplish. Got to be really careful about the ineffective use. And I'm going to throw this one up because this is one of the neatest gadgets that's probably come out in a while, other than the phones themselves, the smartphones. iPads. iPads can do some incredible things. I have like this little $10 clicker thing that I'm using. I found an app the other day that I can do that with my iPad. That's a pretty expensive clicker, right? I can touch the screen on my iPad and make it scroll through my slides, okay? For $800, I can do that? No, it does a whole lot more than that. But iPads, and the example that I'm going to give you, which is an ineffective use of it, the school that I'm just coming from decided they're working with Apple, and they're going to get some kind of a grant thing that they've got going on, and they are going to give all of the kids in the high school iPads. We're going to give out those iPads to them. They're like, ooh, wow, oh, that's cool. They have been marketing that like crazy about all the kids getting that. I asked one question at one of our meetings, so what are we doing with them? And they're like, I don't know. They just know that it's a cool technology. The one thing that they figured out that they're going to do with them is that they can get their textbooks and put them digitally onto the iPad. That's cool. The kids don't have to lug around these big books in their backpacks because the books will be on that iPad. That is an expensive deal to do, because I'm starting to count up how many textbooks they have, what cost those textbooks cost us, and how much that iPad cost, and that's pretty expensive to do that. My issue with the whole thing is they don't know what they want to do with those iPads yet. And I think it's really neat that they're willing to try to spend the money and do the things that they're doing to get technology into the kids' hands. But you can't just take that technology and put it in their hands without having a plan for how you want to use it. In other words, they haven't figured out. What they basically did is they have this tool. Now what can we do with it? And that's not a bad thing. I love to walk. This sounds really weird. I love to walk through office supply stores, and I don't know why, but I walk through and I go, ooh, and I'll see this little gadget over, and I'm like, ooh, that is cool. What can I do with that? I'm not trying to figure out a reason to buy the thing because it looks cool. If I could find a legitimate reason or something I need it for that I could use it for, then I would buy the tool. That's kind of a bad way to do that, coming on the back side of things. So I see a danger with the technology when you take the school systems or you take teachers that try to just throw the technology but not have a really good plan to do that. So I don't want the term flipping to become synonymous with the videos. The videos are what allow us to do the flipping. What we need to do is get our head around, get our brains around what this flipping is actually doing and not concentrating on the video part of it. Because one of the biggest things that the naysayers, if you want to call them that, are saying about flipping is, and this is a brief argument from their side, but teachers are recording their lectures so that they no longer have to stand in front of the class and lecture. They give these lectures to the kids, send them home. The kids watch the lectures when they come to school. The teacher hands out a packet and the kids work in the classroom. That is a bad teacher that's doing that, because all they're doing is they're taking the teaching side away from themselves and having an ability to throw out worksheets because they've disseminated the knowledge. If that's what flipping was about, then yeah, I would say flipping is a bad way of teaching school. However, that is not what flipping is. We came up with some different definitions of it, but this was just kind of a brief one. I just kind of brought some stuff. Flipping is a methodology of teaching that allows the teacher to make the best use of class time. I think that is the crux of what it is that we're trying to focus on. We have to learn how. Videos are a very, very, very important part of this. I could not have done what I did in my classroom this year had I not had the ability to do the videos. Because what the videos did is the videos allowed me to free up the class time that I was using for lecturing and to be able to do other stuff in the class that I couldn't have done before. I taught high school chemistry. Our schedule, the way that we had our school schedule set up, was on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday we met for 50 minutes. That's how long the class was 50 minutes. On Thursdays and Fridays, we ran those as block days. They were an hour and a half long class. So I would have my kids for 3 50-minute periods, and then one of those block days, either Thursday or Friday, depending on what class period they had. So for me as a science teacher, we were actually the ones that kind of pushed it, was the science department. Those Thursday and Fridays were spent as our lab days because we had a whole hour and a half to do labs, which was awesome, coming from having to try to cram those things into a 50-minute class period. That left me Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday to be able to disseminate all the information I had to disseminate out to those kids and also be able to somehow work with them to see if they understood it, if they comprehended it, to give the test, to do everything else. If I got behind and had to do it, what I had to do was sacrifice lab time to come back in and do it in that hour-and-a-half class. And so sometimes it was a lot of lab times that got canceled so that we didn't do labs every single week, which for me being a science teacher, the learning was taking place in the labs and the activities, not in those lectures. And so what flipping allowed me to do, those videos, is what freed me to allow. Now I wasn't spending that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday lecturing anymore. We were working on the things that I had distributed to them through the videos, through the lectures. On the nights before, we could actually work on those in the classes, whether that was balancing chemical equations, working on some shorter activities that didn't have to be done in the lab, etc. So with that, here's some possible things. These are just some things that we as a presenters brainstormed a little bit. So now we take the lectures and we pull that time that we were committing to the lectures out of the classroom. And now we've freed up that block, that that 3 50-minute classes for me, or whatever it is that you have. I've now freed up that class time. What are the kind of things that I could now do, or that the students could do, having that as free class time? What are these? We hate to use the word activities, but what are the activities that we could do? Independent problem solving. It really helped. Kids are going to learn different ways. And what it allowed me to do is, let's say that I'm working a unit and I keep falling back to chemistry. You know, you'll have, that's what I know, you'll have to kind of pull that into what it is that you do and what you would like to be able to do in the courses that you teach. But with us as the chemistry teachers, we have to work a lot of problems. We have to solve a lot of different problems: conversions, stoichiometry, balancing equations. What that allowed us to do, what that allowed them to do, was to have some independent problem solving. What happens to them is the typical, I stand up and lecture, teach it, work some examples, maybe we supposedly do a couple in class, you give them some practice problems and they go home. They get home. Even if the kid was a really good student and completely paid attention to my boring 20, 30-minute lecture and worked the problems, they worked like 2 or 3. And then they get home and they are by themselves. They're out on an island now. And so now they get stuck. What are they going to do? What's the only options that they have to do? Anybody?
Call a friend.
Yeah, call a friend.
Wait till class the next day.
Yeah. And if it was a graded homework assignment, then they showed up and it's not finished, they're going to copy a friend. Yeah. I mean, those are pretty much the 3 basics. They're going to either wait till the next day, they're going to phone a friend, copy from somebody, or give up. Just don't do it. In this kind of a situation now, and this kind of thing that you've created in your classroom now that problem set that they're going to practice is given to them in the classroom, and you're there to help them, or a friend is there to help them. And so that actually allowed them some of this independent problem solving. They could either work on it by themselves, they could work on it as a group, and when I say group work, it's not group copy work, right? But now I have the flexibility. I can actually keep that from happening because I'm rotating throughout the classroom. I'm going to the group. And one of the things that I personally found for me, the biggest struggle that I had with my flipped classroom wasn't in the videos or flipping it. It was in how did I grade their objectives? How did they get grades? And I still struggle with that. I haven't conquered this whole thing yet. But from the objective side, I could actually walk up to a group that was working. There'd be like 3 or 4 students working. And I could walk up to the group and I could point to one of the problems and I could say, show me how you worked this. And they would walk me through it. Or if the group was kind of working, I'm like, are you guys getting this? And they're like, yeah, we're getting it. Because, you know, you're an adult, they're teenagers, they want you out of their life, right? Get away from the table, go, get away from me. You do number 1 for me, you do number 3, and you do number 5. I'll just stand here and watch y'all do it real quick. And I'd stand there for about 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. It became very apparent whether or not they knew what they were doing or not. And so I actually had that independent interaction. Student-created content. That's not something that I did so much in chemistry, but I would love to learn a little bit more about how to do that. That is one of those really cool social studies, history, English things, where the kids actually have some time to create some of their own content, collaborate with each other to do that in your class. Yes, sir.
One of the things that was suggested by Alan November was to have the students create tutorials. And again, they become the teachers.
Right.
And that's the biggest demonstration of their learning.
Right.
To video record, Camtasia, whatever, for them to actually create tutorials for others.
Right. If the webinar can't hear it, the man here was saying, Alan November talked about them being able to create their own tutorials and things to teach one another in the classroom. And that's a really good, because what I found too is, and this doesn't really go against what I'm telling here, but making my own podcast, I figured out my own videos, I found out I was able to critique myself as a teacher pretty good, because I had to go back and watch me. And I figured out, man, you talk too much, you're blowing that over. But what I found was, is in the class dynamics themselves, I'd have a student come up and say, okay, I watched the video and I don't understand how to do this. And I'm like, okay, what is it you don't understand? Well, I don't know how to do it. And so I'd start re-explaining it the same way I'd done on the video, like I'm not getting that. All of a sudden, one of the other students would pop up and say, well, it's like this. And they'd start talking to each other, and they go, they get it. And I'd be like, how did you get that from that? How did you understand? It's because they speak teenager. They live in a different world than we do. And so, yeah, that dynamic plays in there. So having these students being able to work together just brings this huge dynamic into the classroom. You still have that student, and I did, that will sit over in the corner, in the floor. They hate chairs and desks. They sit in the floor, over in the corner with their headphones, lost the word, headphones on, watching the podcast on their iPhone or their Android or whatever, and working problems or taking notes. They wanted to be completely isolated from everybody else. And this worked. That was the kid that had you tuned out in class during the lecture, because they were their own independent person doing their own thing. Versus I had the other groups that were chit-chatty and would do things, and you pass by them every 4.5 minutes and get them back on track. But the dynamics worked great. Inquiry-based activities. Oh my gosh, so one thing I ran into this year, the biggest fault I had in my chemistry classes, I ran out of stuff to do in class. I have never ever in my whole life ever had that happen in chemistry. I never get through all the units I ever wanted to get through, and never get to do all the activities. I had this huge amount of time open up to me, because no longer was I spending those days lecturing anymore. The project-based learning, you guys have all heard that. So those are just some possible things. What does effective use of class time provide for the teacher? So from my side, what was I able to do now that I had this free time, now that I had to do that? And if you'll notice something, other than me creating the videos for this so that I had this time, has anything I've done right here ever talked about technology? Nothing. I could do almost all this stuff without technology. Can I come up with some technology? Sure, we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But the things I was able to do, interactive questioning, the way that I graded my kids when I first started doing this didn't work real great. Worked superbly, not from a time management. We had a set of objectives for the chapter that you had to cover for that unit. The kids would come up and they'd say, okay, I want to do objective number 2. I'd say, okay, sit down in the chair of death. That's what we called it in class. It was this chair that was sitting right next to my desk, and so the kids called it the chair of death, because they hated coming to that chair. Because they would come and sit down, and I'd say, okay, we'll say, for instance, that the deal was that you had to be able to name metals and non-metals. That was a chemistry thing. Okay? You got to be able to do it. So I'd sit back and say, okay, I want to do this objective 2. Okay, what's objective 2? Naming metals and non-metals. So, okay, teach me. And I would play the student, and they had to teach me how to do that. And they hated it. The comment came back from the student, we have to know this stuff. We have to know this stuff really well to be able to get credit for it. And you just smile and you say, yeah, that's right, you do. You actually have to know this, don't you? And so the kids kind of learned that. They learned, they live it. And it was really neat, because I could pitch in some differentiation in that. Because I have a student, which, you know, you'll find that real quick into a school year. You'll have a student that really, truly struggles with this. So when they came up to do that objective with you, you could go, you know, they're getting that well enough. They'll be able to do okay with that on the end of the unit assessment. I'm going to let that go. I think that's good. They might have made one little mistake here or there. You talk to them about it. but you give them credit for that. Then you had the Einstein of the class that could probably have not even had to, probably didn't even listen to your podcast and figured it out. Comes up and starts teaching me. And I would play devil's advocate with that one, because right, they're playing the role of the teacher, I'm the student, and they'd explain, I go, well, that's not what my teacher in my other school told me. And they'd look at you like, what? And I was like, then I would tell them one of the common misconceptions for whatever it was. I would tell them wrong. And they'd go, oh. And I'd go, well, so which is it? Is it what you told me or what my other teacher told me? And I would make them defend their point. That's the way I could push those kids that were the achievers, the overachievers, the ones that wanted to go further with it. Did I do that with them every time? No. Did that system work? Oh my gosh, yes. It was completely awesome, except for how long did that just take me with that one student? 5 or 10 minutes, and now the line builds in my classroom for all the kids standing up waiting in line to go to the chair of death. So what I had to do was modify that. And what I had to do was quit having them come up with me so much one-on-one, but as I would migrate and work my way through the classroom, I could do those same kind of assessments, but on a quick, on the spot. And I literally carried a clipboard around with me that had the names with the objectives across it. And I would just walk up to the student. They didn't even know they were fixing to be tested for that. And I would walk up and say, hey, I see you're doing those. Can you show me how to name this particular acid or whatever? And they would show me. I'd go, okay, that's cool. I'd mark it off, and off I'd go and hit the next person. And so that helped a little bit too. So interactive questioning, idea exploration. The big one, bullet number 3, answer that, why do I need to know this? You know, there's still some things in chemistry I can stand here. I'm 47 years old. I took chemistry in college. I teach chemistry. There's stuff in that chemistry that I've never used in my everyday life and still don't use. Unfortunately, that's just one of those things, you know, we have standards that we have to teach. You have stuff, you have to learn that, do it. You know, they ask me why for some of those things. It's, well, because you have to pass, in Texas, you have to pass chemistry to graduate from high school. So you have to do that. That's a sad motivation to have to learn that. But there's a few things. But what I have found is with the class time that I've had available to me now, I have been able to bring in a lot more of these, what you would call, is anybody, if you're a chemistry person, there's a thing called chemistry in the community. I'm not so sold on the whole program, but I pulled stuff. There's one of the units that they do that's, I think it's the very first unit that's like water. They have this big fish kill out at their lake. And they go through and learn how to analyze the water samples. And they learn about acids and bases and things, but it's from a real world practical standpoint, because these scientists are trying to figure out why all the fish died. And is there something wrong with the water that we shouldn't be drinking? And you go through a whole gamut. I never, ever, unless I adopted that curriculum, I would have never had time to have gone through and done that basic unit. Having all this class time now, I could go through and do that. And so that actually kind of brought the real world stuff to them as to this chemistry stuff. I may not ever go be one of those scientists that analyzes the water like that, but at least I know why now. And so we did that. Differentiation instructional strategies. You know, kids learn different ways. The one thing I would say about that, and I talked about this in my other presentation with Jason, I had a girl that enrolled in our school late into the school, was late in the summer. She was new to the school. And so they didn't put her in my honors chemistry class. They just put her in my regular chemistry class. This girl was brilliant. She was absolutely so incredibly smart. And what happened, because I was able to do these videos and she could watch them outside of class and then kind of had the class time to work independently if she needed to and do stuff, I actually gave her, I picked it up really quick, like about the first 3 or 4 weeks of school, I picked up how smart she was. I gave her the honors chemistry curriculum, even though she was in my regular class. And she actually took, since we were doing online assessment things, she would take the honors class, the honors test. She worked at the honors pace. At the end of the school year, the girl got honors credit for the chemistry class, even though she was in my regular chemistry. So that was a flip on this differentiation. We tend to focus on the differentiation on the slower kids, but with the faster kids, you're able to do that. Now, am I an advocate that you just roll all of the kids all into one big class, whether they're honors or not? No, that's not the best way to do that. But this at least actually allowed me to do something along those lines. The other thing from me, the students had to take ownership of their material, of what they were having to learn. Because of the fact that now the assessments were sort of an ongoing assessment in the classroom on a daily basis. Before then, the only ways I was assessing kids was by somehow grading their homework papers, which was incredibly labor intensive. And for me, I basically had to back off and make them count like 10% because I knew the other scenario that we talked about. They're copying, they're cheating, they're doing whatever. Those were almost meaningless to me. They weren't testing what the kids actually knew. The only true assessment I had was that big unit test at the end, and that's the only grade they got. With this, I was actually able to go through and check these kids for their understanding as we went along. And because of that, since I was able to do that, I could actually tell how well the kids were going to do on tests and predict whether or not they would pass those tests. It was hard trying to put this into the ABCD or numeric grade world that we all have to live in as teachers. That's probably my biggest struggle, and it's still a struggle with that figuring out. But I can tell you that by the end, I didn't have the data for the end of the school year, but by the end of my first semester, we had covered one unit further than I had ever covered in the 4 years before that. And my overall averages were 5 to 6 points higher per student that went across there, just in general. And so the reason why that happened was because the students started having to take ownership of their own learning. They could not pass that objective unless they could prove to me that they could pass the objective. It got rid of the students that could sit there and just play school. It got rid of the students that knew that this was hard, so just shut down. Sure.
Did the oral checks count as part of their grade?
They did, and one of the things I struggled with for that, the question from the webinar came, did those oral checks count as a grade? What I first started trying to do was grade it based on how many objectives you had completed was your grade at the end of the week. But what I realized really quickly was that was grading you on how fast you could do the work. And the students that were slower got lower grades, and that wasn't where I was going. And so I had to modify that a little bit. I never did find an awesome, great way. That was one of the biggest things I struggled with for the school year. What I ended up doing was started to count the grades, count their objectives, and would give them the hundreds for the objectives, and those would count a smaller portion. Depending on if they were on pace or not, I made the pacing a smaller percentage of their grade, and then their unit assessments. Their unit assessments ended up being the bigger percentage of the grade. And that's something that I really want to work on. I've got to figure out a better way that I can give them some kind of a grade based on their completion of those objectives. And I'm not real sure quite how to do that. And so that's something I really want to brainstorm with and get together, because I know there's some folks out there, and I've read some really good ideas of some ways that some people handled that. I tried to adopt John and Aaron's, and I'm probably not getting quite what they're doing because it seems to be working for them. So in all honesty, that was one of the struggles I had as a first-year flipper. And that was one of the things I brought out in my other presentation was one of my struggles as a teacher this year was that I bit off too much stuff. I bit off doing Camtasia. I had to learn that and learn how to do the videos. I had to learn, I did online management, so I tried to learn how to do Moodle, and then I also jumped into the whole mastery program and trying to figure out how to revise the whole grading scale that would fit in. And it was too much stuff all at one time, and it overwhelmed me at points. Yes, sir.
How did you sell the flipped philosophy to your parents?
To the
Did
parents.
you have any resistance as to, gosh, that's not how I learned in high school in my chemistry class. Why do these kids need that?
Right. The question is, how did I battle, or how did I do the thing where for educating the parents for this whole flipping concept? How do I get them on board with that concept? When I first did this, I decided to stick my toe in the water, and I did it at the end of the year before last for about the last 9 weeks. And I met with great resistance because I wasn't doing my own videos. I used John and Aaron's, and all of a sudden my email box fills up after like day 2, huge emails. Why has Mr. Wilie, why have you quit teaching the kids and let these other people teach? Because their concept of this, which is actually one of the naysayer things I talked about a while ago, is that they think that you're just taking the videos, especially if it's somebody else doing them, throwing those out, you don't lecture anymore, and then you hand out the packets. And I found out that it was bad. We talk about, well, if you think you want to do this, just kind of dabble into it and just try it a little bit. If you try to do that toward the end of the school year, you've got a whole set of parents that are all used to a certain way you've been doing stuff. You've got a whole set of kids that are used to doing a certain way, and now you just pulled the rug out from underneath them and completely changed the whole game. And I almost wouldn't advocate doing that, because I spent a lot of time, and I finally got a master document of explanation that I could send to all of them. The first of the school year, I needed to come sell them on that. So we were lucky because we had parent ed nights, we had parent night right at the very beginning of school, and I showed them the video. I would show them a clip of one of the videos, and then I explained to them what we were doing in class. And it goes right back to what John and them talked about. You mean you're going to spend a whole lot more one-on-one time with my kid? You mean all they're going to be doing in class is working with you while you're walking around and hovering and making sure they're doing work? Yeah, they were on board. I can honestly tell you this, I did not have a single parent that had a criticism of my flipped classroom this year. We had a couple of things with some grades that they didn't understand, and we had to clear those up a little bit. Really short, brief email.
Do you have a PowerPoint or document that you showed parents that you would be willing to share with people?
I do. I can probably put that out on the vodcasting name.
On the name.
Yeah, if the question was, do I have a document that shows that it was the letter that I basically sent out that I kind of did for introducing them? It is, and I actually stole it from John Bergman, but I modified it for me. But yes, I'll do that. I'll see if I can post that on the Ning. It's if you log on to the vodcasting.ning.com, I believe that's the right web page for it. In the groups, you're going to see a group that's the 2011 Flipped Class Conference, something along those. And when you click on that, there's going to be some discussions for each of these presentations we're doing. And if you'll look underneath this presentation I'm doing, I'll see if I can load that and get that on there. It may take me a day or two to do that, but I'll try to do that for you. All right. Let me see. So, how has this whole thing changed? What's the teacher's role now in the classroom? Now that I'm not standing there lecturing, I've become a learning coach to the kids. I've become a mentor. I'm a source of help for those. It changed my whole relationship with my kids. The whole thing changed. And I told the group a little while ago that I had within a presentation, if you do this, you better get ready. You better be careful. You better get ready, because you're fixing to get to know your kids. Because you're fixing to start working. I'm using fixing a lot. That's a Texas thing, right? Nothing's broke. We're fixing it. We're about to learn a lot about the kids, because, I came back, my background was I grew up in a stable family, mom and dad, still married to this day. If I didn't do homework, it's because I didn't do it. It's because I was lazy and had no excuses to have not done my homework. That's probably still true for 85% of our kids, maybe. But what I found is that when I would talk with the students about why they hadn't completed certain things, or why aren't we getting this done, I started finding out about their life. I started finding out that their parents are split and they're being bounced back and forth like a ping pong ball. They're living with the guardian. They have a really, really sick family member that they've been to the hospital for the last 3 nights with. I started finding those things out. If you are not ready to get emotionally attached to your kids, then you better not flip, because you're fixing to do that. You're about to do that, because you're really going to get a relationship with those kids. That is an awesome thing. I really got to know my kids that way. And I had never, in the 10 years I'd been at this school, I had never got to know those kids. And all of them, not just that little random bunch that you do, and then there's those few that you never even interacted. It was with every single student that I had. The point of all of this is one of the things I had to learn as a teacher, because we're control freaks, is that the teacher's not the disseminator of all knowledge. And I really want the kids to understand that. As we went through the school year, one of the things that I ended up doing, I got a little bit overwhelmed in the year with trying to, learn how to do Camtasia and Moodle and grading system. I was also a first-year AP chemistry teacher. In case y'all haven't figured that out, I'm 47. I've been teaching for 11 years. I graduated in 1985 from college. There's a pretty big gap in there, right? I had to go back and learn college chemistry real fast. And I was pedaling pretty hard trying to do the AP Chem class and do all this. So midway through the year, at the Christmas break, I broke off and started using John and Aaron's videos, just so I didn't have the video side of having to do that. And it was very interesting, because at the end of the school year, I found out that the kids actually enjoyed mine better than they did John and Aaron's. I'm like, y'all are crazy. Because John and Aaron have that whole interaction with each other. They're awesome teachers. It was just me, just blabbing away, talking. And they said, and I asked them why, and they said, because you're our teacher. And that just meant the world to me. Plus, the thing you were bringing up about the parent thing, if you start handing them videos of other people doing stuff when this thing first starts out, then they're thinking, well, what happened? I thought you were the teacher. And I was private school, so the deal came up. I thought we were paying him to be the teacher. And so that came up a little bit as well. So, but as we went through, the kids said that they really liked mine better. But in using John and Aaron's, it opened the door to us using other stuff too. And the students started figuring out that they could see videos and things from outside resources. And again, it changed my role. Instead of me being the person that was the only person that could tell them anything about chemistry, they found out they could go out and learn a whole lot of that on their own, which is magic, because that's the part, that's where we want the kids being, is that they're starting to become lifelong learners. They're starting to learn how to learn. And I posted a tweet one time, probably a month or two ago, and said, you know, I really felt like after the end of this year, looking back on it, I feel like I taught the kids how to learn more than I taught them about the chemistry. Chemistry class was just sort of the tool to teach them that. So when we use technology, it's got to be in a way that enhances what we're doing. You can tell from my story, I hope you're getting, that I jumped off too fast, because every one of these technologies that we're talking about, you've probably already experienced it now, have learning curves to them. It's great when you can go and get, you know, lessons and stuff. I was on an island for myself trying to learn a lot of this stuff. And the kids will pick up on that in a hurry. The kids will also pick up on the fact that if you're just throwing technology at them, they get bored. Kids have, you know, I myself am getting into this world now. I record almost every show I ever watch on TV anymore so I can fast forward through the commercials because I want it. I get mad at my laptop when I push a button and it just doesn't hurry up and do it. If I have to wait like a whole 3 seconds or 5 or something, the kids are just as impatient with that. And so the technology that they're doing, you may think they know how to use the technology, and they do to a large degree, but a lot of the stuff they don't. So teaching the technology side, if you can use it as a tool, is incredibly important. And in this whole flipping thing, the technology is going to start allowing us to do a lot of things that we weren't able to do before. But again, the flipping side of this is not just about the videos. I hope that you're getting from this the dynamics that are starting to take place in your classroom, because you've changed the way that you're teaching and you're not using your class time anymore for the lectures.
If you're already familiar with Camtasia, Blackboard, etc., should it be easier for us to go to Flipped Mastery?
Right, yes, very much. So the question was, if we're already familiar with Camtasia and some of the other learning mastery stuff, is it, yeah, for sure, because Camtasia was really, really quick to learn. If you don't get really bogged down in doing a whole lot of the Steven Spielberg editing like I did, I shared a story. Y'all can all tell me from the audience, how long should your videos be?
10, 15.
10 or 15, right? Who'd y'all learn that from? Like everybody, me, everybody around here. Text me. Everybody's been telling y'all that, right? I got every bit of that last year. I knew every bit of that last year. I sat down and I created my first video. I had a music introduction. I had my bullets, my call-outs would like come in and flip and do things. I embedded some video tracks into them. Man, I had this monster. We're talking, this is my first one. Monster, it was so cool. And when I mean monster, 1 hour and 20 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. John Aaron said 20 minutes, but this will be okay. Gave it to my kids. They hated it. Mr. Wilie, that's ridiculous. That's great. Well, okay, y'all can do that for 3 days. They still hated it. Not to mention the fact that it took me at least 3 to 4 hours of time editing that and doing that. Because number one, I was trying to learn how to use it, but number two, it just took a long time to do all of that stuff. And so I learned in a hurry that I don't need to be making some kind of a Steven Spielberg production. If you already know how to use Camtasia, you can start plugging those things in because it becomes quicker. You still don't need to do an hour and 20 minutes, right? But you can still do some things like that. So yes, to answer the question from the webinar folks, yeah, if you already know how to do that, you are one step ahead, because you're going to be able to crank out your videos pretty quick. And now your focus can start becoming on learning that online management system or the grading system. Or what I would really like now is, for me, what I'm seeing is I've learned how to use Moodle. I'm sure not a master at it at all. I would really even I probably wouldn't sit down and try to teach you how to do it. I can do Camtasia, okay, and I can do the mastery method I'm still struggling on. Now I can focus on the mastery stuff. Now I can focus on what am I going to do in class now, because I ran out of stuff to do this year. I honestly did. I ran out of things to do. I've never had that kind of lab activity and time and stuff to do. And so it's like John and Aaron, again, we're seeing the end product of what they did, but keep in mind, they told y'all it took them 4 years to get here with all of this. Have they learned a lot of the things that are saving us time? Sure. Sure.
Have you ever had issues with students pulling the videos and editing it to make a funny video or alter it and send it out on Facebook, etc.?
Have I ever had an issue with the kids taking the videos, altering them, and republishing them? No. I don't think any of my kids wanted to take the time to do it, but now that's out there, so
Well.
that'll probably start happening. No, I never had that as an issue. I can tell you that when I started using John and Aaron stuff after a point, we were covering stoichiometry, and I got incredibly sickly tired of hearing this voice in my classroom, "The Land of the Mole," from Aaron Sams. Because when we were working stoichiometry for the chemistry and non-chemistry people, one of the parts of the conversion step is you have to convert something to a mole and then go mole to something else. It's like you always go through the mole. And that was one of the things. He did the land of the mole. And I heard that echoing through my classroom for weeks because they would say it themselves out loud. They would be playing the video, the vodcast. It was crazy. So when we do it, when we use technology, and again, this is not about not using technology, and I hope that that's not what you're getting. The point of my presentation today is that it is not just about those videos, because if it is just about those videos, then we're losing the points. It is freeing ourselves up with class time. Now as we become flipping the class and having the class time, is there technology that we can use in the class besides the videos? And the answer to that is, oh yes, my gosh, there is tons of it. I just threw up ones I thought up off the top of my head. Number one, the videos. You can use them for direct instruction. Are videos good for teaching everything that we need to teach? No way. There's a lot of the stuff. I've had some of the ones I've watched where they've done demonstrations, where they've blown something up or done something. And I'm thinking, you know what, if you can do that in class, that's better than doing it on the video. Now, if I'm really blowing up something big, I can't do that in class, so at least I can video blowing it up out at my house or something. But this idea that you can videotape everything, there was one teacher that I thought was a really interesting idea at the beginning of their, it actually wasn't chemistry, I think it's like their physical science class that we have in Texas in some of the schools. They needed to learn what all of the pieces, all of the basic equipment was and how to use it. And what the teacher did is they went by and they videotaped each thing and talked and showed them how to use it. And then what they did is they actually, this particular teacher, they actually had some iPod Touches. They've been given a grant, and they put an iPod Touch in each one of the stations with that video. And it was sort of like that deal, you know how you used to walk through the museum and listen to the thing and it would tell you about each of the exhibits? That's what that video did, except it showed you how to use it. So that was an interesting thing, so that the teacher didn't have to take you through the whole class and do that, but you could actually go, and they could go back in there and review it at any time they wanted to. They even kept them on file. They actually just had the little thing on file. You could come watch it on a laptop. The collaboration tools, Google Docs. The presenters today, we ordered lunch using Google Docs. The other day we went to low tech and they passed around a paper menu to us, and we all wrote down on a piece of paper what we wanted, but we were all in different places today, and so they just posted it out on Google Docs, and we just logged on and typed in our name and told them what we wanted on the deal from this one sandwich shop and did it. I mean, those are some really simple things. We ordered lunch using Google Docs, okay? Is that a technology you have to be able to do that? No, but it was kind of cool that we could do that. You can teach the kids those things. Mobile devices, they used to be called cell phones, right? How much time do you spend talking on it? Like, none. You text on it. The kids don't. I don't think my daughter probably has more than about 15 minutes of airtime talking on her deal in a whole month. But I guarantee you ought to see the printout page that AT&T used to send for her text stuff. So she was texting all the time. Those are incredible devices that the kids have in their hands. And you all a lot of you are on board with it. You all know it. we've got to figure out some way to be able to let the kids use those in education. There's definitely some issues with it, but there's got to be some way to do it. You know, it's interesting. I saw an article the other day that talks about the schools trying to find the money in their budgets to buy iPads and laptops and all of those things. And it's interesting, your kids have those things already. It's like you could almost, I saw one school spent their entire tech budget on upgrading the bandwidth and stuff in their school, making hotspots in the school for their Wi-Fi, and pay teachers the training on how to use the stuff instead of going out and buying the equipment, because the kids already have the equipment. I know that you run into bukus of issues, and it's a huge discussion for another day. But I was able to do that with my kids. I was able to let them do that, and it helped a lot. I was very restricted. I couldn't get more than about 3 or 4 laptops on my Wi-Fi in my classroom at one time because the bandwidth was so narrow. So that limited me. I started letting the kids take some of the tests on their iPhones. How they did it, I don't know. I've got bifocals. I'm like, how are you reading this question? But they did fine with it, and I just started letting them do that. I didn't advertise it. I just kind of started letting them do that. Screen capture software such as Camtasia, Gene. I've seen, this is probably more on the corporate side of stuff, but Adobe Captivate, I've never worked with it, but I've seen it before. There's other stuff that's out there, but those are 2 of the big ones there. And then the online assessment software such as Moodle, and there's a lot of other ones out there as well that allow you to do some testing. So am I anti-technology? No way. But I just want you to make sure that you get, coming from this conference, that the technology is what's allowing us to do the flipping. But come back and focus on what it is now that you've got the ability to free up some class time because of that. Find the things that you're going to do, develop what it is you're going to do in class, because that was my big mistake. I didn't have nearly enough for them to do in class because I had never had that kind of time at all. Yes, ma'am?
Are you going to keep the mastery learning, or are you going to modify for next year?
I need to modify it a little something different. I've got to do something. I still love testing them on the objective. The question was, am I still going to do the mastery side of it? I'm going to do a component of it. I've got to do a component of it because that's what enabled me to see the kids, because the kids in my regular class had to make a 75 on their unit test before they moved on. And that was very crucial because in chemistry, everything builds on everything. And if you made a 65 on the last unit, then when you come into the next unit, you're going to have a really, really, really tough time, okay? Because you didn't learn the other unit. So if I could at least get them, if they were making 75s on that major assessment, then what that told me was, and the way that I set up the test and things, they were getting the most essential objectives that they needed to move on to the next unit. And that helped. I want to, yeah, pretty much so. And that's hard to do. That takes a little bit of practice to do that. And I've gone back and fixed some tests because I've seen some stuff that I didn't test quite as hard in that unit as I should have. But, I mean, it's always a work in progress. One thing I got from my kids was I really let them self-pace themselves a lot through the whole school year, and it worked brilliantly for the first month. By the time we got to the second month, all of a sudden it was, ooh, I got a history test tomorrow. I don't want to study tonight. I'll study history in Mr. Wiley's chemistry class tomorrow. And they started turning my class into a study hall because it was self-paced and there wasn't any hard dates on them for a while. And what I got feedback from the kids, I fixed that real quick. So I started putting hard dates on the units that you needed to have it completed. I limited how many times they could retake a test. I had that as open, and this is the teenager mind, right? Okay, I think I know it. I'll go take the test because I can redo it anyway, right? So that's cool. That's fine. You go take it and see what it's like. That's not a bad philosophy. They take it and make like a 32. Then they come back the next day and want to take it again. And I'm like, what'd you do between yesterday and today? Nothing. I just think I can do it. They think magically that, you know, if I take a test 4 times, eventually I'll get like an 80 on it. Well, you know, with the software, with the Moodle I had, it's changing the problems every time. You never get to memorize the answers. It's creating a new test every single time. And so, but I had kids taking tests 7 and 8 and 9 times. And those are the kids that, you know, you back up and you sit down and you go, okay, you're not learning it, you're not getting this. And had time. So I backed off. I limited it to like 3 attempts. And so they would still blow the first one. And then they got a little more serious about number 2 and number 3. Whatever it was they got. And I had to move. Even if they hadn't mastered it, they needed to go. But the kids caught on real quick, and that wasn't an issue later on.
As they retook a test. I'm not sure if you have an online grading system where parents can view grades and things like that.
Yeah.
If they take it the first time and they get that 37,
Right.
is that what goes in the grade book?
I didn't for a while.
And then the second time, gosh, you know, now I have a 65.
Right.
And the third time, now I have an 88.
Right.
And keep replacing. To me, I think that would be important.
Right. I didn't at first. The question
Yeah.
was, did I post that initial 37 to the grade so the parent could see it and then do it? I didn't at first. I did really quick after that, because all of a sudden that got the parent being the advocate on my side. Oh, they made a 37 and or the average tanked. I mean, the whole bit. And I was like, yeah, they got 2 more tries though, and then you get the parent start to beat on the kid from the other side, and that helped a little bit too. So yeah, that was one of the other little learning things I learned about doing that. So I think that was pretty much it. It's 3:30. That's about 10 minutes shorter. Again, there's the link for the vodcasting. We keep calling it a NEAN. It occurred to us yesterday as presenters that we're using some lingo that some of y'all might not be familiar with. I haven't heard of a NEAN before until I joined this thing. It's just a website. There's probably something behind NEAN. Someone can tell me what that is, but that's the link for it. It's just basically vodcasting.nean.com, and again, you can find the discussion groups. If you're one of the person that does tweets, if you want to tweet about this specific conference, we did the pound flip class 11 for the hashtag for it, and just in general, it's flip class. Also, if you want to follow me for some unknown reason, mine is at Wilie. It's Wilie. Only got 1 L, and there's no Y's in the back end of the name. So if you're interested in that. You're free to ask some questions if you want to. Open forum. You can get out of here for a little bit. Don't forget that we're all going to kind of gather in the commons here at 3:40, which is about 10 minutes from now, just to pass out some more free prizes and do a few things. And if that's it, I'm going to kind of cut. Y'all that want to go, if there's some questions, I'll be sure. I'll go ahead and answer those. Webinar, go for it.
They want to know what you're going to have for breakfast tomorrow.
What am I having for breakfast tomorrow? The bagels that I bought at Safeway. Because the hotel breakfast costs too much money.
They're disappointed in you coming from Texas. You should have more than that.
Oh, that I